Let me ask the question this way. Why are men giving women so many unplanned pregnancies? It's an alien question in our society, isn't it? The question of what is the man's responsibility in the creation of unplanned pregnancy, and then their obligation, if any, after the birth is forced, never comes up. Just irrelevant to the conversation somehow. In all this discourse surrounding abortion laws and reproductive rights in America, especially now, it never comes up what the man's responsibility is, even though a man is involved in the creation of a pregnancy every single time, not most of the time, not some of the time, without exception. Every single pregnancy requires a man's input. Why is this question deemed irrelevant by our society? Why is there no message, concern, clarity, recourse, or education for men around the subject of conception and responsibility? It would seem the answer becomes that creating unplanned pregnancies isn't their responsibility, that somehow half of the procreation equation is responsible alone for the repercussions of unprotected sex, that women are the gatekeepers of the creation of pregnancy, and that we alone are to bear and manage the result of it, especially if it's unplanned. There are no discussions on what a man's responsibility is to these forced births. That, for example, as the father, they could maybe be lawfully obliged to financially support the children that their mother is forced to birth, or even in passing, mentioning the need to educate our men in their responsibility and look to determine repercussions. If the responsibility and the repercussions of an unplanned pregnancy are the females alone, if they are the guardians of unplanned pregnancy, then they alone should be the guardians of the laws surrounding it in their state. What I'm saying is that the conception and abortion laws each state is to vote on now should be voted on only by the women of that state. Because, in the final analysis, our society says that the woman let it happen, that she wasn't a good gatekeeper. We can all admit that this is culturally ingrained in all of us. Did the man let this happen? Was the man a good gatekeeper here? If we are unable to amend this to a woman-only vote, then we need to debate buy-in for the male. We need to add responsibility and repercussions for the voting male. To mandate establishing paternity for all unplanned and forced births and determining law over paternal obligations in these cases. DNA testing can be completed as early as 9 weeks into a pregnancy, or to debate mandating reversible vasectomies to ensure that there can be no unplanned pregnancies to force birth on. If our society's objective is to prevent unplanned pregnancies, then this is actually the only fail-proof solution. It allows for an overriding intentionality by controlling the male's extraordinarily motivated contribution to all conception. This eliminates unplanned pregnancy itself by circumventing the will of the man involved, whether or not the will or consent of the woman is present. It protects the spilling of God's seed by holding men responsible for their choices. We need a new rallying cry in the aftermath of the Supreme Court ripping away precedent. A precedent that protected the bodily autonomy of over half the population like that. The Supreme Court gamed the process and allowed domino effect trickery through the instant implementation of unchallengeable trigger laws hidden in place, and by the vague proclamation that now citizens can determine the reproductive laws in their state. Our rallying cry is no longer let the woman decide. Our rallying cry is now let the women decide. Let the women of each state vote on their conception and abortion laws, because as it stands, they are the only ones who will be held accountable for not only their own conception decisions, but also to go ahead and cover the conception decisions of men. And let's be clear, women, by and large, do want limits and laws surrounding unplanned pregnancy. Allowing termination up to 20 weeks unless the life of the mother is at risk or the mother has not yet reached the age of consent is a reasonable start to the conversation. We need to lobby our representatives to determine one. Who created the trigger laws in the states that have them? Was it a democratic process? Who drafted them and who implemented them? Let's see them. 2, who will define and how will state abortion and conception laws be on the ballot in your state? Let's see them. Let's contribute to them. 3, demand debate on the concept of only women vote on these state abortion and conception laws that govern only them. If it becomes determined through process that both men and women will vote on these laws in their state, then we need to force male buy-in by mandating financial support from the father upon paternal determination and or forced debate on the question of reversible vasectomies, which is male bodily autonomy. Right? By enforcing conception laws, we hold both sexes responsible for their conception decisions. # only women vote. Everything's changed.